On a November morning in 1990, 13-year-old Crystal Lee Sorrell, known to her family as Crickette, left her home in Ladson, South Carolina, and never made it to school. Her disappearance shook the community. Her murder haunted investigators, and her family spent more than a decade waiting for answers. Tonight, we honor her memory and we revisit the case that took 13 years to solve. This episode is dedicated to Crystal. This is Remembering Crickette. For more than a decade, the murder of Crystal Lee Crickette Sorrell remained unsolved. But in 2003, advances in forensic science and a renewed cold case task force brought investigators back to the evidence. They reopened the file, re-examined the woods, re-interviewed witnesses, and one name kept resurfacing. In the early 2000s, South Carolina agencies formed specialized units to re-evaluate long-dormant cases using strengthened forensic tools. When detectives pulled Crystal's file, they noticed inconsistencies in statements provided years before, timelines that didn't match, stories that shifted, memories that no longer aligned. One individual, a teenage boy at the time of the murder, had provided information decades earlier that now drew suspicion. His name was Brian Lamont Lamb, 14 years old at the time of the crime, now an adult, with a past that investigators believed held answers. Detectives discovered that Lamb had provided accounts in the years after the murder that contradicted other witness statements. And in some versions, he seemed to know details that only the killer could know. At the same time, another man, Eric Castro, emerged as someone who had withheld critical information from investigators in the 1990s. Detectives began piecing together the puzzle. The proximity of the suspects, their ages at the time, their access to the area where Crystal was found, their changing stories, the forensic evidence, now more useful than ever. Bit by bit, the case began to breathe again. With enough material to justify deeper scrutiny, the task force interviewed both men. They cross-checked each answer with evidence, with timelines, with the original crime scene findings. It didn't take long before investigators believed the truth had finally surfaced. Lamb had murdered Crystal. Castro had protected him. After nearly 13 years of silence, detectives felt ready to move. On October 6, 2003, the break the Sorrell family had prayed for finally arrived. Officers arrested Brian Lamont Lamb for the abduction and murder of Crystal Sorrell. He was no longer a teenager. He was a grown man, now forced to face the crime he committed as a boy. Eric Castro was also arrested, charged with hindering the investigation and withholding key information. For Crystal's family, the moment was bittersweet. The man responsible for taking their child's life had walked free for nearly 13 years. But now, justice was finally at their doorstep. Prosecutors built their case methodically. Forensic review, witness testimony, new investigative findings, reconstructed timelines, expert analysis. The evidence was compelling. The inconsistencies in Lamb's stories served as a roadmap, pointing directly toward guilt. By the time the trial date was set, the community of Latson had waited a long time to hear the truth. And the truth was devastating.